Welcome back to the Simulator Series. In today's episode, we are going to be scripting the system to display the winner from the previous leaderboard season. Now, hopping directly into Studio, the first thing that we're going to do is create the part inside of our workspace for where we're going to be displaying the winner's Roblox character. So inside of the workspace, we're going to add a brand new part, and we're going to rename this part to be called Leaderboard Winner. Now that we have this part, I'm going to go ahead and drag it right beside our leaderboard info sign. And now with this part, we want to make sure that the orientation is somewhere around 160 for the Y. The reason for that is because we're going to pivot the character model to this part. And from where our camera is at now, we want the player to be facing our direction. So in order for the player to face the right way, we need the orientation at around 160, because otherwise, if it was say at -100, then it would be looking to the side. And if it was more towards say -20, then it would be facing the complete opposite direction. So that's why we want the Y of the orientation to be around 160. In addition to that, we're going to move this off the ground a tiny bit. And then let's go ahead and modify some important properties of this. So we're going to go ahead and set the anchored property to true. We're going to set can collide and can touch to false. We can also set can query to false as well. And then for the transparency, we're going to set that to about 0.5. Now, eventually we will adjust this transparency to 1 so that we no longer see it at all. But for right now, we're just going to leave it at 0.5 so that we can still visibly see it. Now, we're pretty much done with setting this part up. So what I'm going to do is put this inside of the spawn folder. Now, the next thing that we want to do is create the winner Billboard GUI. And this GUI is going to be displayed over top of the player's character's head. And it's going to display what position the player came in, how many clicks they received, and also their display name as well. Now, to easily do this, we're going to go ahead and actually duplicate the pet GUI, which is the Billboard GUI stored inside of the replicated storage. So we can go ahead and duplicate that. And then we're going to rename that to be called winner GUI. And for right now, we're going to put that inside of the server storage. Now, to make creating this GUI a little bit easier, what I would normally do is use a plugin to load in my own character, or really any character model. But some of you might not have this plugin, so another alternative that we can do is use a character that's already in our game, which is a part of the jump shop model. Now, it really doesn't matter which one you use, but if you don't have the plugin and you don't have a character model freely available to you, then you certainly can just use this model right here, because we really just need to try to work with the character model. So anyways, what we're going to do is take this winner GUI, we're going to cut it, then we're going to go inside of the character model and put it inside of the head part. So we're going to go ahead and paste it inside of there. And now we can actually see it. Now, to be fair, considering we do have another GUI on this model, it might not have been the best model to actually select, but for right now, I'm just going to disable the other GUIs so that we only see our winner one. Now, we want to modify a couple of properties of this Billboard GUI. The first thing we want to do is decrease the stud offset a tiny bit on the Y-axis. And we're going to change that from being 4.5 down to 3.5 so that it just appears above the model's head. Then we'll go inside of the GUI itself and inside of the frame. And now we have a couple of text labels. Now, for the upgrade label, we're going to rename this to be called place. And for the text of this, we're going to say something like first place. Then for the rarity text label, we're going to rename this to be called clicks. And for the text of this, we're going to say something like 999 million clicks. Then finally, for the pet name text label, we're going to rename this to be called player name. And for the text of this, we're just going to use our own player name as an example. And now that's all the changes that we actually have to make to this GUI. Of course, feel free to make any of your own changes if you want to make this look a little bit different. But now I'm going to take this GUI and put it back inside of the server storage. But before I do that, I'm going to re-enable this other GUI that we just disabled to temporarily work on this. And now we put that back inside of the server storage. And with all that being said, we can now get around to scripting this. So in order to begin scripting this, we're going to go inside of the server script service and open up our leaderboards module script. Now, the first thing that we want to do inside of here is create another static variable similar to our leaderboard end timestamp. But this one is going to be called last leaderboard end timestamp. And what we're going to set it to is our previous leaderboard end timestamp. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this and paste it right up here. Then what we're going to do is go ahead and start off with a brand new season. So we're going to go ahead and replace the leaderboard end timestamp with a brand new Unix timestamp that has not expired yet. Now, since we did update that leaderboard end timestamp, we should go to our leaderboards config and update the rewards table for our brand new rewards. But since this video is mostly just to show you how to do this, we're not going to add any brand new rewards, so that's why we're not going to update this table. But if you are making your own game, I would definitely recommend that you implement your rewards here. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is add a brand new variable to here, which is going to be for the winner GUI. So the variable is going to be named winner GUI. That's, of course, inside of the server storage, which is called winner GUI. Now that we've created that variable, let's go ahead and scroll down a little bit. And above our save winners function, we're going to create a brand new function, which is going to be called display past winners, and it's not going to have any parameters. Now inside of here, the first thing we want to do is go ahead and get all of the winners from the last season. So we're going to create a variable called winners, which is going to be equal to the leaderboards variable dot winners. And we want to go ahead and index this table with our last leaderboard end timestamp. But again, because of how Roblox converts numbers and data and different things like that, we want to make sure that we go ahead and use toString. on the last leaderboard end timestamp. And now that should return to us a table of the top 50 winners from our previous leaderboard season. Now, if we don't get any winners, then we want to stop the function right there. Then let's go ahead and create a variable for our first winner. And to get our first winner, we're going to go ahead and index the winner's variable with 1, as that would give us the information of the first element that we have stored inside of that array. And of course, if for some reason we're not able to find that winner, then we're going to go ahead and stop the function right there as well. After we've done all that, we then want to go ahead and get the player's character model. So we're going to go ahead and create a variable called model. And in order to get the model, we have to use a method from the player service. So we're going to say players, then use a colon. And the method that we're going to use is create humanoid model from user ID. And then we need to provide the user ID. And how do we get the user ID? Well, that's stored inside of our first winner table. So we're going to say first winner dot user ID. And if for some reason we're not able to get the model, then of course we want to stop the function right there. Now that we've gotten the model, we want to make sure that we parent that model to the workspace and then also teleport that model to where we want it to be displayed. So we're going to say model.parent equals workspace. And then we'll use the pivot to method of that model and position that model at our leaderboard winner part that we created earlier. And remember, how do we access this part? Well, inside of the workspace, we have the worlds folder, and inside of the worlds, we have the spawn world, and inside of that folder, we have the leaderboard winner part. And now that we've gotten that part, we want to access its C-frame. Cool. So now we've moved that model as well. The next thing that we want to do is we actually want to anchor all of the parts of that model, because if we don't anchor them, then the model could move around and it could even fall over and do weird things like that we definitely would not want it to do. So let's go ahead and loop through all of the parts that are inside of this model and then anchor them. So we're going to say for underscore descendant in model get descendants do. Now, if the descendant is a base part, then what are we going to do? Well, we are going to set the anchor property of it equal to true. Cool. So now our model and everything like that is all set up. The next thing that we want to do is get the player's name. And we need to get the player's name from their user ID. Now, how can we do this? Well, we actually have to use the user service to do this. And because getting this information can fail, we have to wrap that inside of a pcall. So we're going to say local success, comma, player info equals pcall. Then we'll create an anonymous function inside of here. And then inside of this pcall, we're going to go ahead and return the user service. And then we're going to use a method called get user infos by user IDs async. And remember, we've used this in a previous episode. So this method wants us to pass through a table of user IDs. So once we call this method, we're going to go ahead and pass through a table. And inside of that table, we're going to use the toNumber method on the first winner user ID, just in case that's not a number. And now that's all that we have to do to get the player info and be able to get the player's display name. So let's go ahead and create a variable for the name. So if success is true, then this variable is going to be set to player info and index that with 1 because we want to get the first information that was returned in this array. And then inside of there should be a property called display name, which will give us the player's display name. And otherwise, if we don't get any display name, then we're simply just going to go ahead and display the player's user ID. Now, another thing that we want to do with the model is inside of the model, there's going to be a humanoid object. And with humanoid objects, by default, they will automatically display a name above their head, which is generally the player's name. And since we're creating our own custom GUI, we don't want that to be displayed. So what I'm going to do is go back up to where we make these changes to the specific model. And again, inside of the model, we have the humanoid. And the humanoid has a property called display distance type. And we need to set that to a specific enum, which is actually a part of the humanoid display distance type. And the specific one that we're going to set it to is none. Now that we've done that, let's go back down to below where we get the name. And now let's start working with the GUI. By the way, if you hear any sirens in the background, don't worry, my house isn't on fire. It's just close to Christmas. So if you're in the US, you might have all the fire trucks coming through. That's what's happening. I apologize for the noise. Don't worry, my house has not been burning down for the last 20 minutes if you guys heard any of that at all. Although hopefully my audio is good enough that you guys have absolutely no idea what I'm even talking about. And I just sound a little crazy to you guys. That might be a little bit better than having bad audio. Anyway, getting into using the GUI, let's go ahead and create a variable for the GUI because we're going to go ahead and clone that GUI. So we're going to say winner GUI, clone, and what's the first thing we're going to do? Well, we are going to parent that to the character's head. So we're going to say GUI.parent equals model.head. Then we're going to want to go ahead and update the text labels. So inside of the GUI, we have the frame, and inside of the frame is where we have all of our text labels. First, we want to go ahead and update the player name text label, and we want to set the text that equal to the player's name. Then we have the clicks text label, and we're going to set that to a string, but we're going to use the format number, .format compact method on it. And for the value, we're going to go ahead and pass through the first winner amount, which is the amount of clicks that the player received from the last leaderboard season. And after we display the amount of clicks, we also want to include the word clicks after it as well. And now one of the last text labels that we have to update is the place text label. So inside of the GUI, inside of the frame, we have the place text label, and we're going to set the text that equal to first place. Now, of course, the way that we set this up is that you can display multiple winners, but since we're displaying only the top winner of our last leaderboard season, that's why I'm just going to set the place text to first place. Anyways, with all that being said, we are officially done with setting this entire thing up. The last thing that we have to do is call this function. And where are we going to call it? Well, we're going to go all the way down towards the bottom of our script. And after we call setup leaderboard info, we are going to go ahead and call display past winners. Now that we've done that, let's go ahead and save our game and hop directly into it. And now, once we load into our game, I am the winner, so my character is being displayed here. We can see that I came in first place, I had 10,000 clicks, and my name is MonzterDEV. We can also see my character model as well, with the cute little pug on my shoulder. So I guess the last thing that we have to do is actually hide this part right here, and we will be all good to go. Now, hopefully I can teach you another thing that you might not have known in Roblox Studio. You should be able to hover over this part and see the blue outline around it. If for some reason you're not able to see that, what I'd recommend you do is try to hold down Control or the Alt key. If you're unable to see that outline, although you can in this scenario because this is just a part, but let's say this model, for example, we actually want to select this like board part that's in the middle of this model. What we would do is we would hold down the Alt key, and when we hold down the Alt key, we can actually see that it highlights this part right here for us to select. So we can actually see how the model is set up. Even though the board is the primary part of the model, whenever we hover over this model, it just lets us select the actual model itself. But if we want to select the individual parts that make up this model, we can hold the Alt key, hover over it, click it, and now we can see that that actually lets us select the outside mesh part or the board part. But without holding Alt, it just selects the overall model itself, and it won't actually even let us select anything on the inside until we hold the Alt key. Now, I know that's kind of besides the point for this individual part, but hopefully it's just another lesson that I could teach you if you were unfamiliar with that. Anyways, let's go ahead and select this part and finally set the transparency to 1 so that we no longer see it, and now that system has been complete. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, with all that being said, that's going to be it for this episode. As always, if you guys did enjoy, make sure you smash the like button, and feel free to go down below in the description to check out my Patreon. You guys can support me and gain access to all the scripts and game file that we made during this entire series, and you can get a lot of other assets as well. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next episode.